the membership person this year, and I've placed on each of the rows some membership applications. If you're not members, we'd love to have you be a member. If you are a member and haven't paid your dues, we'd love for you to pay your dues. And if you would just like to sign up to be on our mailing list to get the newsletter, if you'll just give us your address and all and indicate you'd just like to be on the mailing list, that'll be great. And then one other thing, I wanted to unveil, if you will, the sesquicentennial quilt that has been made by the Lake Point Quilt Group, and the material was donated by Judy Hall with the Texas Quilt Works, and we are delighted. We just picked this up this week.
We have with us Gary Bourne, who is our city manager. Gary, will you stand up? He was our mayor for years, and now he is our city manager. And we have David Hill. David? There we go. This is our present mayor, and we're real proud of him. Let's give him a hand. You are so fortunate. You are so fortunate because we have a time limit. Sometimes when we get started, we have a little difficulty. We're most enthusiastic. Today, of course, we are from faith. I want everybody who was born in the faith community to stand up, please. All right? Would you state your name?
David Water. All that.
Anyone else? All right. How many of you have relatives who were born in faith? Raise your hand. Had relatives born in faith? Very good. Now, how many of you have been to faith? Raise your hand. Okay. So we all have an active part in our program today. Joe Leonard is going to tell us about the early history and some of the businesses. And Catherine Stevener is going to concentrate more on the churches and our social life. Of course, that was our life. Our life was faithful when we all grew up. We knew very little more. Doris Cullins is going to tell us about our schools. Ruth Holt and Dorothy Harris have been showing you some show and tell back there. And if you didn't get to see some of it, we brought very little over. But after this is over with, we'd love for you to meet them back there and share some of the things that we brought back from our museum that we have started in the City Hall. We've just about pushed the mayor and the city manager out. But we do have a lot of pictures. We would love to personally invite you to stop by City Hall and see what we have. And I am Billie Stevenson, and I'm going to tell you a little about faith today. Let's go back to 1980. 1980, we had 191 people living in faith. 1980. 1990, 10 years later, we went from 191 to 475. We're going on up. But then, 10 years later, we went, listen to this, we went from 475 to 497. So we grew very little in those years, 1990 and 2000. But with the subdivisions like Sleepy Hollow, Northview, and Melody Ranch, 2002 we went to 1,145. 2003 we went to 2,030, which was in 1 year a 51% increase in population. And with the conservative estimate of 20% for annual growth, our projection is in 2010 we will be at 6,000, and then it goes on and on and on. I'm going to leave this back there to see it just goes up and up and up. So we are growing. Faith has always had a vision. And of course with Wood Creek being the dream of the City Council of the 1970s. We've been working on this since the 1970s. And it's coming a reality today. The entry is on Highway 66 as you go into Faith from Rockwall. And it is north. And they have approximately 200 homes already constructed there. with plans to expand to 5,000 homes. And this property is in the Rockwall Independent School District and the Roy City Independent School District. Now, Rockwall, as I understand it, already has a site in place for an elementary school. Today, our city is planning another community on the south side of Interstate 30 by the name of Williamsburg, and it's estimated to have around 1,800 homes. The master plan community will feature a cultural arts facility, a new city hall with municipal court services, a veterans memorial, and many, many more things, much office space. I could talk, but my time has run out. I only had 5 minutes. If you will, we wish you would keep up with us, because we are really close to all of you and would love for you to come to see us. We're on the website. It's www.cityoffate.com. And today we have one of our businesses represented. Amber Miller is here, and she has the absolutely hair and nails. Amber, will you raise your hand? Come to see us at Fate. We'll be waiting for you.
Good afternoon. I hope that I'll be able to tell you some interesting things about Faith that you did not know. Did you know that Faith once had a cemetery? Where is it? Well, it's where it always was. But Faith moved. Faith was once located out on 552, just east of the Mount Zion Cemetery that's now located on that road. And the town moved when the railroad came through. The original location, as I said, was on 552, and the old well that supplied the city water is still there. And there is a picture back there on display of the Faith girls visiting the well with its own old stone curbing. The move took place in 1886 when the railroad was built. There was already a community in this area known as Barnes. It was named for W.T. Barnes, the developer. 22 real estate owners met February 11, 1887, and drew up a document changing the name from Barnes to Faith. A copy of this document is displayed on our table as well. Like many towns, the origin of its name is debatable. We went to Crawford, Texas a few years ago, and we found out that they had 3 origins for the name of Crawford. But we only have 2. Old-timers said, and some of the signers of the document said it was named for G.W. Lafayette Payton, whose wife called him Fate. Others thought it was named for Lafayette Brown, whose wife called him Fate also. It was quite unusual that 2 fellows by the name of, and by the way, it's spelled Lafayette. We say Lafayette today, but in those days it was pronounced Lafayette. And it was quite unusual that 2 men would just come in from other different directions and land in this small area with that unique name. While listening to the Texas Rangers last year during the home run inning, someone's name from Faith was called. And the announcer said, Faith, where is Faith? That must have been named by some movie producer. Well, I dashed into the computer and I thought, I'm going to email them and tell them to call up Dizzy Dean. He knows where Faith is. He used to play dominoes there all the time with Blind Jimmy Melody. Yes, I said Blind Jimmy Melody. He was the champion domino player of Faith. All he had to do was just take his fingers and run down the dominoes. He knew exactly what he had. And somehow or other he knew what you had. Anyway, records from the archives in Washington, D.C. indicated that Harvey Peyton sent a proposal for a post office, and a permit was granted on June the 16th, 1880. Harvey Peyton White became the first postmaster. Did you know that the first rural mail route in the state of Texas operated out of Fayette, Texas? E.R. Ellis was the first carrier on this route. In 1903, there were 3 mail routes out of Fayette. Now we can't even get one. The routes were all discontinued in 1923. Did you know that Fayette became incorporated September the 27th, 1900, and was known as the smallest incorporated town in the smallest county and the largest state in the United States? That, of course, was before Alaska. Did you know that Fayette had a bank that was organized in the 1920s? During the Depression, the state closed all the banks. This was known as the Bank Holiday of 1933. The Fayette Bank was the first bank in Rockwall County allowed to reopen after being examined and found solid. Fayette has suffered 2 fires and a tornado, but the citizens failed to survive. The fires occurred long before the Fayette Fire Department was organized. Did you know that in 1930, under Franklin Delano Roosevelt's presidency, the Work Progress Administration, or the WPA, was organized to provide jobs during the Depression? As a result, the wooden sidewalks were replaced with concrete walks in 1936. This provided a wonderful place for kids to skate, play hopscotch and jacks, as well as keeping us out of the mud. In the 1940s, 1941, our country went to war. Many of our young men left for service, and some did not come back. Cotton was no longer king, and many found employment in defense plants. The two gens that served our farming community had been reduced to 1, and then that one ceased to be. The farming community was hard pressed to continue operating. Businesses closed, and Fayette almost became a ghost town. In the 1950s, Fayette began to show signs of revival. There were 2 grocery stores, a beauty shop, a garage, a welding shop that repaired farm equipment, a blacksmith shop, post office, and 2 service stations. One of those service stations served as a Dixie Trailway bus stop. The fire department was organized. Street lights were installed, and the mud streets were rocked. North Texas Water District admitted Fayette, and a bond levy was finally accomplished. After the school was closed, the men went to work using the lumber from the old schoolhouse and began to construct the Fayette Community Building. The women cooked and served as writers for their regular meetings, and Thanksgiving dinners were served as well to help pay for the building. In the 1960s, Katy Railway donated land for a baseball field, and D.R. Florence Company erected the poles, while TP&L donated the light bulbs. That's where our city park is now located. In 1969, the sewer system was finally a reality after a government grant was acquired. During the 1970s, Syntex bought 1,700 acres of land within Fayette city limits with the aspiration of building a model city. But Syntex then purchased Fox and Jacobs, and the model city plan was abandoned. In the 1970s, Rockwall had donated a 1930 Model A fire truck to the Fayette Fire Department. Later, a 1946 model truck was purchased in Commerce, and the Dallas Fire Department donated a used pump which was installed. Some good came from the Syntax experience, however. They gave Fate a brand new 1975 model fire truck, which was the envy of all the fire departments in Rockwall County. I remember all of the firemen came over and looked at it. The city hall was remodeled in 1986. This has been a brief review of some of the happenings in Fate through the 1980s. Thank you.
As Billie said, I'm going to talk about the churches and social life, and mine will basically be up until 1950. Joe went at this question. I told him to go ahead and jump over and get up to the 80s. Fate was a small community. It was a farming community, and like all farm communities, they were all interested in schools and churches, and Fate was no exception. In 1885, there was a Presbyterian circuit preacher who served Fate, Blackland, and Millwood, which were three small communities. In 1889, the Baptists organized a church there. They met in the public school building until they built their church, their own building, in the 1890s. It was one of the first buildings built in Fate. Then the Presbyterian had built their own building in 1894. Now that was the same year that the Baptist church was organized, but they did not have their building, so the Presbyterian allowed the Baptists to meet in their building. So then the Baptists extended the same opportunity to the Christian church. But in 1902, the Methodist and Christian churches were built. So Fate had 4 churches, and all 4 of the churches did have steeples. When I made this talk a few years ago, in my notes I had that just 3 of them. But since then, we weren't sure about the Methodist church. But today when I came in, I looked at the pictures, and there's the Methodist church with its steeple. So someone found the picture and gave it to us about 2 years ago. The tornado of 1933 destroyed the steeple on the Baptist church, and it was not rebuilt. There is a picture of the newspaper article on the table there showing the destruction to the Baptist church. But in 1926, the Presbyterian church built another building. It was white with a red roof tile, and this is the only one of the churches still standing in Fate. And when you enter downtown Fate, you can see it on Farm Road 551. And the members of the Presbyterian church still meet there. Now, this church is also remembered by us Fate girls as our church, even though we were not all members of the Presbyterian church, because it was a church where we attended Sunday school, church, and where some of us were married. During the Depression years, the population of Fate dropped to about 100. In the census in 1900, there were 500 people there. So after the drop in population, the churches decided to move to one church and have one to worship. And since the Presbyterian church was the newest church there, they chose this building for worship. At that time, the Faith Union Sunday School was formed. It met at 10 a.m. in this church. Now, we all went there. Everybody attended that Sunday school class. But we were sort of unique in this other way, in that the first part of the year, from January through March, we used the Baptist literature and curriculum Sunday school. And then when the second quarter came, we used the Presbyterian literature. And then the third quarter, we used the Christian literature. And the fourth quarter, we used the Methodist literature. Now, as I said, members of all denominations attended Sunday school. And as I was thinking this morning, our Sunday school teachers were from different denominations. I mean, you didn't have to be a Baptist teacher or Baptist. It was just a Christian person who did our teaching. And our Sunday school had their own bank account, I remember, because we had a Sunday school superintendent, we had a secretary. And I remember the money collected at Sunday school was what paid for our literature. But now when 11 o'clock rolled around, we had a church service. Now this night was a little different. But everyone stayed for church, and others sometimes came just for the church like they do today. Do not attend Sunday school, but they come to church. And the first Sunday of the month, it was a Baptist preacher. And he was in the pulpit for the morning and evening services. Now the Baptists were in charge of that service. Now the preacher was usually a student from the Baptist Seminary in Fort Worth. And he would come out for the day and would have lunch with a family who belonged to the Baptist church. Now on the second Sunday, it was Presbyterian Day. And the pastor was from the Rockwall Presbyterian Church. Same procedure. He spent the day with a family or ate lunch with a family who belonged to the Presbyterian family. Now my sister Doris reminded me that Brother Manley, who was a Presbyterian minister here, used to call our family the half-breed because our father was a Presbyterian and our mother was a Baptist. So we had both preachers in our home. The third Sunday, the preacher came from the seminary at TCU in Fort Worth, and he stayed with a family or had lunch with a family who belonged to the Christian church. The fourth Sunday, we had one from Perkins, the Baptist Perkins Seminary, SMU. And once again, he was with a family from the Baptist, who belonged to the Baptist church. I think we were, in thinking back over this, I didn't think of the time when I was growing up, but we were fortunate to have the seminary so close to us that we could have the students from the seminary come and preach for us. Now the fifth Sunday, sometime the Presbyterian preacher came, and I'm not real sure of that. We've kind of debated between us, but there was a church service, I think, on Sunday, on the fifth Sunday. And now there was a tabernacle that was used by all denominations. I think all of you know what the tabernacle is, with the roof and the sides open. And after the churches started meeting together, the revivals were held in the summer, when all the farmers had their crops laid by, waiting for the cotton crop to open. Yes, you guessed it. It was the Baptist evangelist one year, the next year would be a Presbyterian, and then we had the Christian the next, and the Baptist, then we repeated. So this basically continued until the 70s, when another Baptist church was organized. Today there is the Second Baptist Church there, and Faith is two there. And then we have the Macedonia Church. As I said today, only one of the churches remained standing. The Baptist Church was sold and moved to Chisholm and was there. I thought it was still there till about 2 weeks ago, and I think Joe told me it had been sold and moved out of Chisholm, but it, and the other two were torn down and used for lumber. Now our social life. It's centered around the churches and the people in the community. In the early 1900s, meeting the trains on Sunday, strolling down the railroad tracks, afternoon scenes, parties, and buggy rides were favorite pastime for the young people. Now, in my generation, it was riding around in the car. We'd come over to Rockwall, or we'd come to Roy City. So that was still a fun time for Sunday afternoon. Now, there's something about the train depot that's always attracted the young people of faith on Sunday. And you've seen the picture, I think, of the depot back there. Even in the 30s, there is a picture of a group of girls sitting on a pile of gravel by the state depot, and they were dressed in their Sunday clothes with their hats on. And some of the girls are in this room right now. I don't think we have that picture back there today. The depot is no longer in Fate, but it is still, you can still go look at it, because when they built Interstate 30 in the 1950s, coming through, it came right through our farm. And Dad's barn, where we lived, the farm barn had to be moved, because that's where the road is. When you go through Fate there, you go right to the middle of the farm that we own. And Dad bought the lumber, the depot. The trains had stopped, were no longer stopping, so it was for sale. So he bought the depot and carried it out to the farm and used it for keeping the hay and for our barn. And some of you might remember seeing it as you went down 30 if you were in the 50s or 60s. And then in the 70s, the people, when they opened up Old City Park in Dallas, they came out and wanted to buy it. So the depot that you see at the Old City Park in Dallas, that has Dallas up there, is really the fake depot. So if you look closely, you might see some initials there. But anyway, Dallas calls it theirs, but it is our fake. As Joe mentioned about the baseball, Dizzy Dean, Faith did have a great baseball team from 1907 to 1910. It was called the best in the county. Now in the 20s, there was a bridge club and a 42 club farm for the women. While the men were in the fields, the women would meet and have their social life. The Masonic Lodge was organized in 1896, and it was a social outlet for the men. There is a picture back there of some of the men receiving their 25 and 50-year awards from Masonic Lodge. And then on Friday nights in the 30s, there were free picture shows on the street between the two rows of business. They would put the screen up there on the east end, and they would either, the cars would come park, then you could sit on a blanket or a chair or something, and so we had a free show there. And also there was boxing and street dancing, in fact. I think the highlight, though, to me was Christmas Eve, when we always had a Christmas tree and a Christmas pageant at the church. That tree was huge. I don't know how they got it into the church, but we always had the pageant with our local talent, and then we had Santa Claus would come after the pageant was over, and every child there received a stocking made of mesh with an apple and an orange and nuts. And now and then gifts were exchanged. I mean, they were all over the tree, and they'd call out names, and you would hold your hand up, and that's when your friends, you exchanged your gifts. We also had a church picnic, usually on July the 4th, and many times that was at the Greenville Park. We would all meet and go up there and have our church picnic. We had a sunrise service on Easter many years. Many times it was raining, we had to go inside, but we attempted the sunrise service. Our mothers belonged to the PTA. It was very active. Then there were quilting parties. Then in the 40s, they formed a Faith Bible Club, a book club, and then there was a canasta club for the young married couples who had come back to faith. In faith, everyone knew each other, and we cared for others. Visiting with other family members and friends were a great part of our social life. There exists a bond between the people who grew up in faith, and I still feel that bond, and when you meet someone you haven't seen in years that was lived in faith, you still feel that bond. We all have special memories of growing up in faith. And as Joe mentioned about us being the smallest town, I just loved saying that when I was a little girl. When I meet someone, of course we can no longer say that. And I just can now say I'm very happy and thankful that I grew up in faith. Thank you.
I guess it's very fitting for me, since I've been in education so long, to talk about the schools. It's great to listen to our history. So I'll give you some information on the schools of faith. In 1886, when faith began to grow or began to be, there were buildings and farming families began to move in. The children needed a place to go to school. So a lady by the name of Mrs. Lewis began a school in her home. And then by 1880, there was a two-frame or a small frame house or building with 2 rooms, and this was the school. And during this time, a 2-story wooden building was being built for the school. It was completed and moved into, and that served for a number of years as the Faith School. But in 1911, a brick building, 2-story brick building, was built. And this is a school that we remember. You may not can see it, but it's back there too. This building was known as a Faith Public School, and it housed children from 6 years old through high school. But it was only a 10-grade school. The school was only 8 months long, beginning after Labor Day and ending about the middle of May. In 1913, our superintendent, Mr. J.W. Barker, made a course of study known as the curriculum for the Fate Public School. This is just a copy. We have the original in our museum at Fate, but it's very fragile, it's getting old, and it's been well used. But we had a curriculum, so we were really uptown, so to speak, in our school system. I think I told you that. One thing I remember, we were one of the 5 high schools in the county. Fate, Heath, Chisholm were all 10-grade schools. Royce City and Rockwall had the 11-grade school. But we were all very competitive. We took part in a lot of things and did exactly the same thing. But in the 1930s, the population of Fate began to decline. There weren't many children left. So they took off the 9th and the 10th grade, the 10th grade, and left it a 9th grade school. The children who were going to complete high school, the 10th and 11th grade, had to be bused or taken to either Royce City or Rockwall. So many in our town chose Rockwall as their school, but a number of them chose Royce City, and that's where they finished their school. Then, as people began to leave, the war years had come, there were not too many children in Fate left, so it became a 5th grade school with just one teacher. And local people here in our county who were certified to teach, who were teachers, took the helm of running the Fate School. Brunel Wright, Gary Marion's sister, taught for a year or 2. Then she moved on to other things, and Bonnie Faye Davis, who lives in Royce City now, taught in the school. Evelyn Wallace Laughlin taught for a year in the school, and Dorothy Cullins came to finish up the 5th grade school. She was the very last teacher to teach there. By 1950, Fate, along with other small schools in our county, consolidated with either Royce City or Rockwall. Now you may be interested in knowing that there were many, many country schools scattered throughout our county. The ones who were in charge of forming schools tried to have a school within 2-mile radius of where children were. Now we felt that we were really big, we were from Fate, and I know that Chisholm and Heath felt the same way along with Royce City and Rockwall. But all of these small schools consolidated and came into the Rockwall School District or the Royce City School District. There's a newspaper article that was written in the 1920s that said, if a good school is an indication of a good community, Fate stands in the foremost ranks of such a community. A most successful year under the leadership of Professor J.K. Wells has just ended. We are products of the Fate School, and we are all graduates of the Rockwall High School. Now, how did we become Fate girls? We were born in Fate. As we grew older and retired and moved back to the area, not all to Fate, we felt that it was time to have some fun. So we became a social group. And on our first social outlet, we went to Dallas, downtown Dallas, where we used to shop. We went to Neiman Marcus and had lunch, and then we took a little stroll down Memory Lane and ended up at the Adolphus Hotel. We went many places. We did that for a number of years. This all started back in about 88 or 89. And then we decided we knew so much about Fate. We were getting older. Who was going to tell people about our wonderful town? So we felt we should leave a legacy. we talked to Jerry, and he agreed to let us use the city hall for a museum. Thus, we have all of these things. I hope you'll visit us. But let's get back to school. In our memories, we often talk about things that we did. And these are some of the things we recall. Ball games, football. Faith had a football team called the Cubs. Our colors, blue and white. We even had a mascot. We even had a pep squad. Now, the only ones that were in the pep squad, my twin sister Dot on the end and myself, because we were the littlest kids in the 5th or 6th grade where the pep squad started. But anyway, we cheered our team on. We had basketball, outdoor court, but that was okay. The other schools had the same. We had baseball in our high school. A big event every spring was the UIL, University Interscholastic League, where we were very competitive with other schools in literary and in field activities, track especially. And one fun thing that every kid liked to do in our school was dust the erasers. I guess the reason was we got out of class, and often we would hit the side of the building. The teacher didn't like that. Another thing we remember when we talk about old school days is Miss May Vernon. Miss May was a legend in faith. She taught so many faith students. She was well known, well respected. She was a good teacher, a very strict teacher, but we learned. And one thing I remember most about Miss May, she loved to teach children to write. So everybody had to go through that formal class of penmanship. And we all do write pretty well today. It hasn't left us so. Another thing I remember are the wildflower hunts along the railroad track. This was Miss May taking her class along the railroad track to pick the wildflowers and then come back and paste them on paper and make a big scrapbook of the wildflowers. Field trips on April Fool's Day. Always fun. It really became a community thing. The whole school made a field trip with the parents taking us. One trip that stands out especially in my mind is our trip to Grand Saline to the salt mine. But that wasn't the only trip we made. We made trips into Dallas. It was a big day, April Fool's Day. Another activity was being in school, and mamas and daddies, not many of them, but a few, coming to school for PTA meeting, and we got to stay after school and play on the playground equipment. Faith had a very active PTA. They got wonderful playground equipment for our school ground, and it was used all during the week, not just on school days. Every classroom had a picture of George Washington. It hung right in the front of the classroom. And if you want to see one of the original George Washington pictures that hung in the Faith School, please come to our museum in Faith. We have it in a very prominent place. Now, I've told you some things about Faith of long ago, as I talked about the school and as Joe talked and Catherine talked. What is so great about Faith today? I want to share you some things that make Faith still a great place, not just in our memory, but in reality. F, friendly neighbors, fantastic people. A, awesome future, attractive homes. T, terrific environment, the Faith girls. E, easy access to Interstate 30, easy living. Faith, a great place to be. Thank you.
I've got to tell one story about George Washington. I think, how many of you had George Washington in your classrooms when you were little? Everyone. Okay. Miss Matt taught all of us. She taught everyone. And she would stand with her back to us right on the board, and she would say, Catherine, quit talking to Billie Marion. Billie Marion, quit fidgeting in your seat. Joe, Doris, all of us, Ruth, they would call us by name with her back to us. We thought she had eyes in the back of her head. We thought she was possessed. She was super teacher, not super nanny, super teacher. And we really couldn't ever. And she would call us by name and tell us what we were doing with her back to us. When my sister taught in faith, she came back to teach, and one day I was up there with my sister, and my sister was grading papers in Miss May's room. And I was waiting, so I went up to the board, and I was writing something on the chalkboard, and I looked up. It reflected what she could see, all of us in the back of the room. She did not have eyes in the back of the room. That is real special to me because we were all mystified over this. Again, we would like to close, and then after we close, if you have any questions that we could answer, or Gary Boren or David Hill could answer some questions about fate today. We have in our book, we do want to invite you to come and see our little museum. We have a pen that Ruth Holt had from her Latin class. And we have many things that we couldn't bring today, so please feel free to come and visit us. And in our book, in the front of it, it says, "Come with us and walk away down the lane of yesterday. Thoughts of all those days gone by, days we recall with a wistful sigh. Days gone forever, we know 'tis true, but memory guides our steps anew. We remember, for old time's sake, these people who once were residents of fate." We have a few minutes for questions. Do you have any questions of Gary or David or of us? Yes.
Billie, how many of you went on to be teachers?
All of us but one. But see, her father was the banker in town, so she went into banking. So it's still our lineage. Any other questions?
Billie, I don't have a question, but I'd just like to mention one thing concerning the future fate that probably this group is not aware of. Now, those of you that are familiar with the Texas Historical Commission are familiar with the Main Street program that they have. And that's developing the main streets, trying to restore it back to where it was in years past. We have a young couple in faith that runs a donut shop there. Their name are the Browns. They recently acquired Block 8, and that's the lot that the old First State Bank was on. They are planning to start a Main Street program. In fact, they're looking for bids right now, I understand, to put a facade, a facing on that building, that lot there, that's a lookalike to the old First State Bank. They're also planning later on in their plans to make a facade of the old grocery store that's next to it, the old dry-goods store that's next to it, and the old drugstore that's next to it. So I think this is going to be a real asset, not only for faith, but for Rockwall County and the community. And I would like this group to give them as much encouragement as you can, because it's a big task for them. They're a very young couple, about their mid-30s. But
museum and we'll open it up. But I have a story to tell. The fake girls, I was the mayor, and the fake girls called the secretary and said, we want to start a museum. The secretary just called me at work and said, Gary, the fake girls want to start a museum. This was on a Friday. I said, well, tell them to put it on the agenda. And all weekend long, I racked my brain about a museum. How's it going to run and this? And then that night, these ladies walked in and I said, fake girls. And I was thinking of the younger generation. So then I had to worry how it would run because these ladies will run that museum with no problem. Just as with the schools. We already know when Faith does get a school that has a football team, we probably already know what that team will be named with the influence of these ladies. And Mayor and I have been talking about a motto for our town. I think we just received the motto that will be Faith's motto with the FAP presentation. But it's a joy to work with these ladies. And I get to tell the stories when they're out there.
And by the way, if any of